Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 5. And in this module, we're going to be considering quantitative methodologies. So for some of you, this is very comfortable territory. You have a strong mathematics background and have taken 2 or more courses in statistical analysis. For others, however, it definitely is not comfortable territory, and I'm afraid I fit in the second category. I'm an arts major all the way. However, I'm happy to say that the readings in this module will add to your understanding of quantitative research. And while it won't qualify any of us to become competent quantitative researchers, it will enable us to be more knowledgeable consumers of quantitative research. So in Module 5, you'll be reading Creswell and Guterman, who consider collecting quantitative data in Chapter 5, and then explore analyzing and interpreting quantitative data in Chapter 6. The video will reinforce the information in Creswell and Guterman, and for those of us for whom statistics are unfamiliar territory, it's very, very useful. All of these readings and videos are going to be very helpful in thinking through what do we mean by quantitative analysis? How is it that we can think through the implications of quantitative research? But whether we do quantitative research or not, this is the kind of research that we encounter often in our professional work as we look at various issues that may arise in educational settings and research around it. In terms of the assignments for Module 5, it's going to be busy. There will be the Forum 5 discussion group. As usual, you will have a question to respond to in the forum with the expectation that you will draw from the literature in both your initial response and responses to your colleagues in relation to the question. You will also be doing a second set of annotations and a synthesis of 7 of the 12 readings you will have annotated by then. For more information about the assignment, you will find the assignment description and rubric in Submit Your Assignment on eClass, as usual, and there is also a video with more information about the assignment posted below where you usually submit your assignment on eClass. So, as always, as you go through that information or as you get into the assignment, if you have any questions at all, please feel free to ask. Okay, so let's think about what is quantitative research. Well, we already know quite a bit from Creswell and Guterman, as well as some of the philosophical underpinnings from Guba and Lincoln. We've learned that it is systematic, as is any kind of research that is organized in a particular way, but that it provides a highly systematic approach to the gathering and analysis of data. It's also empirical. That is, it's based on observable phenomena. So we're talking about social phenomena only as they can be demonstrated by what can be seen and quantified. If they can't be seen and quantified, we can't do quantitative research. Because it depends on quantifiable data in its analysis, researchers use statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques or methods, which your readings will discuss. It also begins within a hypothesis that is either confirmed or disconfirmed in the research process. As we've learned, this is a different approach to qualitative research, in that qualitative research either comes to a hypothesis, as in grounded theory, or its goal is understanding a question, but there is no predetermined hypothesis to confirm or disconfirm as there is in quantitative research. Fifth, it's objective in the sense that the researcher tries through various strategies to separate him or herself from the process in which they are engaged. Arguably, this is always an incomplete process, but as much as is possible, using accepted strategies like blind studies and so on, the researcher attempts to separate themselves from the phenomenon under examination. Sixth, it examines relationships between variables, and I'll be talking about that more in a minute. So what is quantitative research and how does it help us interpret social phenomena? Well, all of these characteristics of quantitative research are what it is, and are also how it helps us to interpret various phenomena in education and other social contexts, dependent on the statistical relationship of variables. The readings and videos provide a look at some of the issues that need to be addressed in statistical analysis. So, for example, Creswell and Guterman point out in Chapter 6 that there are 2 main types of statistical analysis: descriptive and inferential statistics. So what are descriptive and inferential statistics that are key tools in quantitative research? Well, I'd like you to look at a very brief video that will introduce you to both of them.
to the first statistics lecture. Because this is the first lecture, we're going to be starting off with some of the most basic concepts, and right now I'm going to teach you about descriptive and inferential statistics. So first of all, what is statistics? Well, statistics is the science of collecting, organizing, and analyzing data. Data being facts or pieces of information. Now I'm going to give you 3 examples of data, like the ages of students in your statistics class, or the genders of the last 8 people to walk by, or even 5 randomly measured IQ scores. Basically, any information you can collect is data, and then you'll eventually do math with that or something. So when people talk about statistics, they're usually talking about 2 main divisions. There's descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics consist of organizing and summarizing data, while inferential statistics consist of using the data you've measured to form conclusions, usually about other data. Now I'm going to give you an example of these 2 things. So let's say there are 20 statistics classes at your university, and you've collected the ages of the students in one class. And right below I have 15 ages that you have hypothetically collected from different people in your class. A descriptive question that could be asked about this data is, what's the most common age of student in your statistics class? Which, in this case would be 18 because you have the most 18s out of everything. And an inferential question that could be asked about this data is, are the ages of the students in this classroom similar to what you would expect in a normal statistics class at this university? See that the first one is just asking us to describe data, while the second one is asking an additional question about that data. Now, the data you get will be drawn from either populations or samples, usually samples, but I'm going to explain both. Now, the population is the group that you're interested in studying, and the sample is a subset of that population. Basically, your sample comes from the population, as shown in the diagram below. So let's say you want to find the average GPA of a student at your university. Your university has 20,000 students, and you randomly select 100 of them and ask them what their GPA is. In this case, the group that you're interested in studying, your population, is that 20,000 students, and your sample is that smaller group of 100 students that you've taken from the population. And for the first video, that's all I really want to talk about. I want you to have a strong idea of what statistics is and, a vague idea of what data is. Know the difference between descriptive and inferential statistics, and know the difference between populations and samples, but also how they relate to one another. Basically, that samples come from populations.
Okay, so now that you have a basic understanding of descriptive and inferential statistics, let's look at these concepts in a simple study I conducted several years ago in Alberta. And I want to say that I didn't do the statistical analysis, but I worked with a statistician who was able to develop the survey with me, with my research goals in mind and that sort of thing. I was on the Gender and Diversity Committee with the ATA, and we had become interested in exploring a persistent question in education. How can we better understand the gender disparities in the teaching profession? We did an extensive literature review and found that the issue was highly complex, and statistics for the gender distribution in teaching remained remarkably stable. Somewhere around 70 to 80% women participated in education, and 20 to 30% men participated in education. So I want to add a caveat here that when we were doing this study and when we were doing the research that I'm going to be talking about, we were talking about male presenting and female presenting teachers, and we did not account for alternative gender representation. So my study took as its population beginning teachers in Alberta, and we had a larger number of those, and I can't remember what that, and I've lost that number, so I apologize, but we have this larger population of all the beginning teachers in Alberta. But the sample came from those attending a conference for beginning teachers. Most of those attending participated in the survey, and they self-identified as either female beginning teachers or male beginning teachers, as I mentioned earlier. Creswell makes the statement that when you are comparing 2 or more groups or relate 2 or more variables, that your analysis becomes by necessity inferential. So I'll take him at his word, and certainly I was able to make inferences by looking at variables in relation to the 2 gendered groups within this sample. in my study. So using my descriptive data about males and females in teaching in Alberta, for example, how does my population compare to the general percentages for males and females in the wider teaching community that we know by general percentages? So as an aside, at the time of this study, the economy was booming and the number of males was down in relation to the total population of educators. But research tells us that the number of males rises when the economy offers fewer alternatives to males. And then it lowers again when there are more alternatives. And at that time, there were more alternatives. So here we have of those attending the Beginning Teachers Conference, we had 64 who and most participated in this study. There were very few who didn't participate in the study. So these numbers were generally the numbers that were in attendance. So we had 64 males attending the conference, and we had 277 females attending the conference. So the percent was 19% to 81%. So it's around that 20-80% that's on the lower end for males and on the higher end for females. And then, we'll see over time that it may go up or down, but at that time, that's what it was. So our 100% was we had 341 participating in this survey. Oh, oops, sorry. So one of the, in thinking about this study, one of my larger questions was, why are there more female than male teachers in Alberta? Why, and anywhere else you want to look at in the world for that matter? I chose to tease out some of the aspects of this question, or variables, using a survey in which respondents answered several questions about aspects of this larger question. And one of the questions that came up, so we had a survey that asked questions around what is the career trajectory of male and female teachers, the population of beginning teachers in Alberta, the sample, the descriptive statistics, and our hypothesis ended up being, after looking at this initial information, was that males enter teaching, and after looking at the literature as well, males enter teaching at different life stages than females. And this seems a logical hypothesis given the disparity in numbers. So perhaps females start thinking about education earlier, and because it's more embedded in terms of their thinking about their career trajectory, they become teachers, whereas males tend not to do that. So there were several variables that we looked at in addition to this. For example, we looked at whether males or females received greater encouragement from various categories like friends, family, media, teachers to become a teacher. And as our hypothesis suggested, females received a lot more positive reinforcement around thinking about becoming a teacher, whereas males tended not to receive that same kind of positive reinforcement from these various locations for receiving that reinforcement. But in the example in this slide, we looked at variables in the time period when males and females made the choice to become a teacher. Our survey provided 4 choices of education level when participants in the survey chose to become a teacher, and then distributed them by gender. So as we can see, the females are these kind of light purple, and the males are this kind of deep, I don't know, magenta or whatever it happens to be. So as we can see, at the elementary level, there were many, many more females than males who began thinking about becoming a teacher at the elementary level. It was about even at the secondary level, and perhaps partly because so many of the girls had made that decision, and they continued with that decision at the secondary level. But then we see again a great disparity at the undergraduate level, where many more males than females had decided that's when they decided that they would become a teacher. And you can think of probably lots of different reasons, but this is what the statistics told us. So one of our hypotheses was that males tended to think about coming into teaching at a different time period than females, and that was confirmed by our data. And there's, a lot more to the study, but just this gives you some awareness of how you can kind of think this through. So obviously quantitative research requires very specific skills to complete a study successfully. Not everybody has those skills. For example, the general consensus is that a competent quantitative researcher needs at least 2 university-level courses in statistics, as well as a large enough sample to be able to draw meaningful conclusions. And those 2 issues are perhaps difficult to attain. I didn't take a course in statistics in my undergrad and a very bad course during my PhD studies, so I hired a very competent statistician, as I mentioned, who worked with me to develop the survey and interpret the data. However, we all need at least a general awareness of the processes, the methods used in quantitative research, and this module's reading helps us with that so that we can become, as I said, knowledgeable consumers. We need to know some of the most common terms so that we can read a quantitative study and at least understand it enough to make a judgment about its validity. That is, we need to become a knowledgeable consumer of research because it's necessary as a researcher and a professional educator, since so many policy changes and discussions about education are premised on quantitative studies, particularly in this age of accountability. So wherever you fit on the knowledge spectrum of quantitative research, I hope this module will be helpful to you in thinking about the possibilities and the limitations of quantitative analysis. So thank you for listening to this video. I hope it lays the groundwork for watching the readings, or doing the readings and watching the video that you'll be having a look at, and gives you a little bit of a context for what we're going to be talking about. So all the best, and if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask them.